Aging brings wisdom, memories, and experiences that shape who we are, but it also brings changes, some of which no one really warns you about. These are the little things that creep up on you, the shifts in behavior that might catch your loved ones off guard. You don't mean to be difficult. You don't want to push people away, but sometimes as you age, things just change. And often these changes aren't talked about. Maybe you've felt it yourself. You forget where you put your keys again. You insist on doing things the way you've always done them, even when someone suggests an easier way. You find yourself avoiding phone calls, preferring the quiet of your own space. You feel a little more irritable, a little more impatient. It's frustrating and maybe even a little embarrassing, but you're not alone. Now, people don't talk about these things enough. They don't tell you that one day you might open the fridge and realize you're just not hungry anymore, that keeping up with personal hygiene might start to feel like a chore, that falling asleep and staying asleep might become one of your biggest challenges. These changes aren't your fault. They're part of the aging process, shaped by biology, emotions, and the realities of a life well lived. One of the first things people notice is memory slipping away, little by little. Maybe it starts with names. You see a familiar face at the store, but for the life of you, you can't recall their name. Or you repeat a story, not realizing you've already told it twice before. Sometimes it's more than just forgetfulness. It's losing track of what you were about to do, standing in the kitchen wondering why you walked in there. It's frustrating, but it's also natural. The brain changes with age, and even if you don't have dementia, those little lapses in memory become more common. But here's the thing, memory isn't just about forgetting, it's also about how people react to you forgetting. Maybe your children sigh in frustration, your grandkids tease you, or a friend gently reminds you of something you should remember. It can make you feel embarrassed, even defensive. No one likes being reminded that they're getting older. But the truth is, memory needs exercise just like the body. Keeping the mind active, reading, playing puzzles, learning new things helps keep it sharp. And if you do forget something, it's okay. It happens to everyone. Then there's the stubbornness. Maybe you've heard it before. Someone saying, why are older people so set in their ways? The truth? It's not about being difficult. It's about holding on to control in a world that seems to change faster than you can keep up with. When you've spent decades doing things a certain way, it's hard to suddenly be told there's a better way. And it's not just about habits, it's about independence. Maybe your family suggests you stop driving at night, but you don't want to give up that freedom. Maybe they want you to use a smartphone, but you like your landline just fine. Maybe they insist you should move to a smaller place, but you love your home. It's not just about being resistant to change. It's about feeling like each suggestion chips away at your autonomy, and that's hard. But sometimes stubbornness can create distance between you and the people who care about you. They're trying to help, but you feel like they're trying to control you. Finding a balance, knowing when to hold firm and when to compromise, can make all the difference. You're not being difficult, you're protecting what matters to you. But the world is changing, and sometimes a little flexibility makes life easier. Then there's something no one really prepares you for, how isolating aging can feel. You don't wake up one day and decide to stop seeing people. It just happens. Maybe your best friend moves away. Maybe you lose someone you love. Maybe it's harder to get out and about. And little by little, the invitations slow down. The phone doesn't ring as often. You find yourself preferring the quiet, avoiding social events, telling yourself you're just fine on your own. And maybe you are, but isolation sneaks up on you. One day you realize it's been weeks since you really talked to someone. You don't mean to push people away, but at the same time, the idea of making the effort feels exhausting. It's easier to stay home. But loneliness does something to the mind. It makes you feel disconnected, makes the world seem smaller, makes life feel a little less full. You might not even notice the mood swings at first. One minute you're fine, the next you feel irritated at the smallest thing. The television is too loud, someone is moving too slowly in front of you, a well-meaning comment rubs you the wrong way. You don't mean to snap, you don't want to be impatient, but some days the frustration builds, and before you know it, you're upset, and you're not even sure why. Aging changes the body, but it also changes emotions. Hormones shift, medications affect mood, chronic pain wears you down, and when you don't always feel like yourself, the little things that never used to bother you suddenly do. You might notice it, or maybe someone else points it out. Either way, it's hard to control something you don't even realize is happening. And then there's the clutter, not just the things around the house, but the things you hold on to, the objects that carry memories, the items that remind you of a time, a place, a person. Maybe you're not a hoarder, but it's hard to let go. Every drawer, every shelf, every closet holds pieces of a life well lived. Getting rid of things feels like erasing parts of yourself. But over time, those things pile up. It becomes harder to find what you need. The house starts to feel crowded. Maybe your kids make comments about all the stuff you have. Maybe they suggest downsizing, and you can't bear the thought. It's not just about the things, it's about what they represent. People don't always understand why it's so hard to part with things, but it makes sense. Every item tells a story. The dress you wore to a special event, the old letters tucked away in a box, the knickknacks that remind you of a trip, a moment, a person who mattered. Letting go isn't just about space. It's about deciding which memories you can live without. Aging isn't always graceful. It's messy, unpredictable, and full of changes no one really warns you about. But it's also full of life, full of moments worth holding on to, full of wisdom worth sharing. And for all the challenges, for all the frustrations, for all the things that feel a little harder than they used to, one truth remains: you are still you, and that matters more than anything else. Aging changes the way you feel about things you once never thought twice about. Take personal hygiene, for example. When you're younger, showering, brushing your hair, and getting dressed in fresh clothes each day is second nature, but somewhere along the way, it starts to feel like a chore. It's not that you don't want to keep clean, it's that the process itself becomes exhausting. Maybe standing in the shower for too long makes your legs ache. Maybe reaching around to wash your back feels impossible. Maybe you used to enjoy picking out nice outfits, but now changing clothes feels like a hassle, so you just grab the same thing you wore yesterday. And maybe no one says anything at first, but eventually someone gently suggests that you freshen up. And that moment, being reminded of something you used to do without a second thought, can feel like a little sting of embarrassment. But here's the thing, this isn't laziness, it's the reality of an aging body that doesn't move as easily as it once did. And if you've found yourself struggling with personal hygiene, you're not alone. The same goes for appetite. You might wake up one day and realize that food just doesn't seem as appealing as it once was. Maybe you used to look forward to breakfast, but now the thought of eating feels like a chore. Maybe everything tastes a little dull, a little different than it used to. You take a few bites, but you're just not hungry. Or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe you start reaching for snacks more often, chips, sweets, anything that's easy to grab, because cooking feels like too much effort. You tell yourself you'll eat a real meal later, but later never comes. A lot of people don't realize that as you age, your sense of taste changes. Foods that once brought you comfort might seem bland. Medications can alter how things taste, and sometimes food just doesn't hold the same appeal when you're eating alone. Cooking for yourself feels unnecessary, so you settle for whatever's easiest, even if it's not the best for you. And after a while, you start to notice the changes, a little more fatigue, a little less energy, maybe even some weight loss. It's easy to dismiss it, but food fuels your body. And even if you don't feel as hungry as you used to, your body still needs that fuel. Sleep changes too. Maybe you used to sleep through the night without a problem, but now you wake up at 3 in the morning, staring at the ceiling, unable to fall back asleep. Or maybe you wake up too early, no matter how tired you are. Some nights you struggle to fall asleep at all. Other times you drift off fine, but then you wake up again and again. It starts to wear on you. You feel groggy during the day, but when night falls, the cycle repeats. And when you do finally get some sleep, it never feels quite as restful as it once did. It's not just you. Sleep patterns change with age. Your body produces less melatonin, the hormone that helps you sleep. You become more sensitive to disruptions, aches and pains, make it harder to get comfortable. Medications interfere with rest, and sometimes your mind just won't shut off. Maybe you're worrying about the future. Maybe you're thinking about people you've lost. Maybe you're just lying there hoping sleep will come, only to be met with another restless night. And then, of course, there are the things you hold on to, the objects, the trinkets, the keepsakes that fill the shelves, the drawers, the closets. People call it clutter, but to you, these things hold memories. Every object tells a story. That old coat in the closet, it belonged to your spouse. Those letters tucked away in a drawer, they're from a time when people wrote to each other instead of sending messages on a screen. That collection of porcelain figurines, they remind you of someone who's no longer here. To others, it might not make sense. They don't understand why you can't just throw things away. They don't see the connection between the objects and the life you've lived, but you do. And letting go isn't as simple as just getting rid of things. It feels like closing a chapter you're not ready to end. Maybe deep down, you know you can't keep everything forever, but parting with it feels too final. And yet, at some point, all of these changes, the forgetfulness, the stubbornness, the loneliness, the mood swings, the hygiene struggles, the sleep issues, the loss of appetite, the attachment to things start to add up. You begin to feel different, not just physically, but in ways you never expected. You look in the mirror and you still see yourself, but you also see someone who has lived through decades of change, love, loss, and growth. And some days that reflection feels familiar, other days it feels like a stranger. No one tells you that aging comes with these little battles. They tell you to enjoy your golden years, to relax, to embrace the wisdom that comes with age. But they don't tell you that some days will be frustrating, that some days you'll feel misunderstood, that some days you'll wish for just a little more energy, a little more clarity, a little more of the life you once had. But here's the truth. You are not alone in this. These challenges aren't just happening to you. They happen to everyone in one way or another. And the most important thing you can do is give yourself grace. There's no shame in the changes that come with age. There's no failure in needing help. There's no weakness in admitting that some things are harder than they used to be. And for those who love someone who's aging, the best gift you can give is patience. The next time your loved one repeats a story, listen as if it's the first time. The next time they resist change, understand that it's not about being difficult. It's about holding on to a piece of independence. The next time they withdraw, reach out, because sometimes they just need a reminder that they're still a part of the world. Aging isn't just about growing old. It's about continuing to live even when the world around you changes. It's about adapting even when it's hard. It's about finding joy in new ways even when things aren't the way they used to be. And most of all, it's about remembering that no matter how many years have passed, you are still you, and that matters more than anything else. As you age, you start to notice the little things that didn't used to bother you. The way your body feels stiff in the morning, the way your hands shake just a little when you try to button a shirt, the way you reach for something and suddenly forget what you were looking for. The world feels a little different, and sometimes you feel a little different in it. But what's hardest is when the people around you don't quite understand. They don't understand why you resist change. They don't see that the routines you've built aren't just habits, they're anchors. The way you fold your laundry, the way you arrange your kitchen, the way you prefer things to be done. It's not stubbornness, it's stability. It's control in a world that keeps shifting. And when someone comes in and starts moving things around, suggesting new ways to do things, telling you that you should let go of this or upgrade to that, it feels like they're chipping away at the small freedoms you still have. They don't understand why you hold on to things. They think clutter's just clutter, but they don't see what you see. The stack of old magazines reminds you of lazy Sunday mornings with a cup of coffee. The dusty record player in the corner takes you back to a time when music wasn't something you streamed. It was something you played, something you experienced. The old coat hanging by the door still smells faintly like the person who used to wear it. Every object holds a memory, a piece of your life, and letting go feels like losing something you can't get back. They don't understand why you don't answer the phone as much anymore. It's not that you don't love your family, your friends, the people who check in. It's just that some days conversation feels like effort. Some days you don't have the energy to explain how you're doing, to keep up with the fast pace of their lives, to find the right words when your thoughts feel slower than they used to. And so you let the call go to voicemail. You tell yourself you'll call back later, but later keeps slipping away. They don't understand why you don't sleep like you used to, how the nights feel longer now, how your mind won't quiet down, how your body aches in ways that make it impossible to find a comfortable position. You're tired, but sleep doesn't come easily, and when it does, it's never deep enough, never restful enough. The clock glows in the darkness, reminding you of every passing hour, every restless night, every morning that comes too soon. They don't understand why your appetite isn't the same, why food just doesn't taste quite right, why you don't feel as hungry, why meals that once brought you joy now feel like something you have to force yourself to get through. Maybe it's the medications, maybe it's the way your body is changing, or maybe it's something deeper, the quiet loneliness of eating alone, of sitting at a table where there used to be more chairs filled, more voices, more laughter. They don't understand why you don't take as much care with your appearance anymore. It's not that you don't care, it's that some days the energy just isn't there. Showering feels like a task instead of a routine. Changing clothes feels unnecessary when you're not going anywhere. Maybe your hands don't work as easily as they used to, and the small buttons, the zippers, the clasps are just a little too tricky now. So you choose comfort over effort, and little by little, the habits you once took pride in start to slip away. They don't understand why you get irritable more easily, why things that never used to bother you suddenly feel unbearable. The noise, the interruptions, the way people talk to you like you're fragile, like you're incapable, the way they sigh when you ask them to repeat something, the way they assume they know what's best for you without asking what you actually want. Some days the frustration bubbles up before you even realize it, and before you can stop yourself, you snap. And then just as quickly you feel guilty because you didn't mean to, but it happened anyway. They don't understand that aging isn't just about getting older. It's about navigating a world that no longer feels quite like your own. It's about feeling like time is speeding up while you're slowing down. It's about watching the people you love grow and change while parts of you start to fade. It's about still feeling like the same person on the inside while the outside tells a different story. And maybe the hardest part is that sometimes you don't even understand it yourself. You don't know why you feel the way you do, why emotions come and go so quickly, why your energy disappears without warning, why some days feel normal and other days feel off. You tell yourself you should be grateful. You remind yourself that aging is a privilege, and yet there are moments when it's hard not to feel the weight of it all. But here's what you need to remember. You are not alone in this. You are not the only one who feels these things, who faces these changes, who struggles to adjust to a body, a mind, a life that doesn't always cooperate the way it used to. And just because things are different now doesn't mean they are less valuable. Just because your pace has slowed doesn't mean your worth has diminished. Just because people don't always understand doesn't mean you aren't seen. Aging is not something to be ashamed of. It's not something to apologize for. It's proof that you've lived, that you've experienced, that you've made it through every high and low, every joy and loss, every moment that brought you to where you are now. And while some things may be harder, while some days may feel frustrating, while some moments may be tinged with nostalgia for what once was, you are still here. You are still you. And for those who love someone who is aging, the best thing you can do is listen, not just to their words, but to what they don't say, to the silence in their pauses, to the emotions behind their resistance, to the moments when they don't ask for help but need it anyway. Be patient, be kind, be present, because one day you will be where they are, and when that time comes, you will hope that someone is there to understand you too. Aging is not easy. It's full of changes no one prepares you for, full of moments that challenge you in ways you never expected, but it is also full of meaning, full of love, full of stories that only you can tell. And as long as you are here, you still have something to offer, something to give, something to share. Because no matter how much time passes, no matter how many changes come, no matter how different life feels, your presence in this world still matters more than you may ever realize. Aging isn't something that happens all at once. It happens slowly in moments so small you barely notice them. One day you wake up and realize your body doesn't move the way it used to. Stairs feel steeper, joints feel stiffer, your energy runs out faster than it once did. The world feels louder, faster, harder to keep up with, and sometimes that makes you feel invisible. You walk into a room and conversations move around you, not toward you. People assume things about you, what you can do, what you can't, what you need, what you don't. And even if they mean well, it can feel like they've already decided who you are before you even get a chance to speak. It's not just about the body, it's the way people talk to you, the way they look at you, the way they hesitate before asking if you need help, the way they assume you must be struggling when you're not, or worse, the way they don't notice when you actually are. The world doesn't always make space for aging, and that's one of the hardest parts. You still feel like you, but it feels like the world sees you differently now. It's frustrating when people assume you can't do something just because of your age. You spend a lifetime figuring things out, solving problems, taking care of yourself and others, and yet suddenly people talk to you like you're fragile, like you need to be handled carefully. They mean well, but sometimes kindness can feel like condescension. There's a difference between offering help and making someone feel helpless, but there's a difference between support and taking over. You don't want to be treated like a child just because you've gotten older. You want to be seen for who you are, for everything you've lived through, for everything you still have to offer. And yet, there are moments when you do need help. And that's another challenge, knowing when to ask for it. You don't want to be a burden. You don't want to feel like you're inconveniencing anyone. So you struggle a little longer, push through a little harder, tell yourself you can manage on your own. But deep down, you know there are things that aren't as easy as they used to be. And admitting that isn't weakness, it's human. There's a fine line between independence and isolation. You want to do things on your own, but you also don't want to push people away. You want to keep your freedom, but you also don't want to feel alone. Maybe you don't go out as much anymore, not because you don't want to, but because it feels like too much effort. Maybe you don't call people as often, not because you don't care, but because you don't want to interrupt their busy lives. And little by little, the space between you and the world grows wider. You tell yourself it's just part of aging, but the truth is loneliness doesn't get easier with age. If anything, it gets heavier. It's hard when you realize that some of the people who were once part of your daily life aren't here anymore. Friends move away, loved ones pass. The circle of people you once counted on begins to shrink, and no one really tells you how to cope with that. No one tells you that one of the hardest parts of aging is learning how to say goodbye over and over again. No one tells you that grief doesn't end just because time moves forward. It lingers in the quiet moments, in the empty chairs, and the memories that feel just as real as the present. But if aging teaches you anything, it's how to hold on to what matters. You learn that the small moments, the conversations, the laughter, the warmth of familiar voices are worth more than anything. You learn that love doesn't fade even when the people you love are gone. You learn that every day, every moment is a chance to create something meaningful, no matter how old you are. Some days you might feel like life is moving on without you, but the truth is you are still part of it. You are still learning, still growing, still experiencing new things. Your story isn't over just because the world wants to focus on what's new, what's young, what's next. You still have wisdom to share, still have things to say, still have value beyond measure. Maybe the world doesn't always make room for aging, but that doesn't mean you don't belong in it. You have spent decades building a life, creating memories, shaping the world around you in ways you may not even realize. You are part of the foundation that others stand on, and that matters. Aging isn't something to fear, it's something to honor. It's the proof that you have lived, that you have loved, that you have experienced the fullness of life and all its joy and sorrow. It's not always easy, it's not always fair, but it is always meaningful. And for those who are lucky enough to have someone in their life who is growing older, remember this: aging is not a tragedy. It is not something to be pitied. It is not something to be fixed. It is a journey, just like any other stage of life. And the best thing you can do is walk alongside the people who are experiencing it. Listen when they speak. Be patient when they struggle. Laugh with them, cry with them, learn from them. Let them know that they are still needed, still valued, still part of the world in every way that matters, because one day you will be where they are. And when that day comes, you will hope that someone does the same for you. Aging is not about fading away. It is about continuing to shine in a different way. It is about embracing who you are, where you've been, and everything you still have ahead of you. And no matter how many years have passed, no matter how many changes come, no matter how different life feels, you are still you. And that is something that will never change. There's something no one tells you about growing older. It's not just about the changes in your body, the way your joints ache a little more, or how sleep never seems to be as restful as it used to be. It's not just about the way the world moves faster, how technology seems to evolve overnight, how conversations sometimes feel like they're happening around you instead of with you. No, the hardest part of aging isn't just the physical changes or even the adjustments in daily life. It's the way people stop seeing you the way they used to. You were once someone who was depended on, someone who held everything together. Maybe you were the one who kept track of birthdays, planned family gatherings, remembered the little details that made people feel special. Maybe you were the one who fixed things when they broke, the one people turned to for advice, the one who always seemed to know what to do. But as time passes, people stop asking as much. They stop expecting you to take charge. They start offering to do things for you instead. And even though it comes from a place of love, even though they mean well, you can't help but wonder, when did things change? When did you stop being the person people relied on and start becoming the person people worried about? You don't feel any different on the inside. You still think the same way, still feel like the same person, but the world sees you differently now. People start speaking to you a little slower, as if they're afraid you won't understand. They assume you don't know how to use the latest phone, assume you won't be interested in learning something new, assume that just because you've lived longer, you must somehow be stuck in your way. And maybe you are, but not for the reasons they think. It's not about being stubborn. It's about knowing what works for you. It's about finding comfort in what's familiar, about holding on to the things that remind you of who you are. And yet, as much as you hold on to those things, the world around you keeps shifting. People you've known for decades move away, start new chapters, create new routines that don't always include you. Friends who once called regularly now get busy with their own lives. The house that was once filled with noise and movement now sits a little quieter. And in that silence, you start to notice the absence of things you never thought would change. The sound of a voice you haven't heard in a while, the touch of a hand that once reached for yours every day, the spaces left behind by the people you've lost. Grief is something no one prepares you for, especially as you get older. It doesn't come all at once. It comes in waves, in quiet moments, in unexpected places. It comes when you find an old letter tucked away in a drawer, when you hear a song that takes you back to a time and place you can never return to, when you catch yourself reaching for the phone to call someone who is no longer there. It's not just about missing the person. It's about missing who you were when they were still around. It's about realizing that life keeps moving forward even when part of you still wants to hold on. And yet, despite all of this, despite the changes and the losses and the moments of frustration, there is still so much to hold on to. There are still new things to learn, new moments to experience, new ways to find joy in the life you have now. The past will always be a part of you, but it doesn't have to define the rest of your story. Just because things are different doesn't mean they are less meaningful. Just because some things have ended doesn't mean there isn't more to come. People think aging is about slowing down, about fading into the background, but the truth is, aging is about finding new ways to move forward. It's about recognizing that your worth is not measured by how much you can do, but by the wisdom you have, by the stories you carry, by the love you continue to give. It's about understanding that even though the world changes, you are still a part of it. You are still here. And as long as you are here, you still matter. Maybe the world doesn't always make it easy. Maybe there are days when you feel like no one is listening, like no one understands, like you're standing on the edges of a life that used to feel full and vibrant, but you are not invisible. You are not forgotten. You are not just a memory of who you used to be. You are still becoming, still shaping the world in ways you may not even realize. There are people who still need you, who still look up to you, who still learn from you. There are conversations waiting to be had, stories waiting to be told, connections waiting to be made. There is still laughter to be shared, still love to be given, still moments of unexpected joy that will remind you why life is worth living. You may not always feel like the person you once were, but that doesn't mean you have lost who you are. Aging isn't about losing, it's about evolving. It's about carrying the past with you while still making room for the present. It's about finding ways to adapt, to embrace, to continue living fully, even when things aren't the way they used to be. It's about recognizing that just because life looks different now doesn't mean it isn't still full of meaning. And if you ever find yourself doubting that, if you ever feel like the world is moving on without you, remember this. You have lived through things that others can only imagine. You have seen history unfold, watched the world change, witnessed the beauty and the struggle of what it means to be human. You have loved and lost, learned and grown, built a life full of moments that matter. And that will always mean something. The years may pass, but they do not take away your worth. They do not erase the impact you've had, the lessons you've learned, the love you've given. They do not take away the fact that you are still here, still living, still creating new moments every single day. And that, more than anything, is what matters. Aging is not the end of the story. It's just another chapter. And even if this chapter looks different from the ones before, even if it comes with challenges and changes and moments of uncertainty, it is still yours to write. You still have a voice. You still have something to say. You still have the power to shape the world around you in ways big and small. So don't let the world convince you that you are anything less than valuable. Don't let anyone make you feel like you are in the way, like you have nothing left to contribute. Don't let the passing years make you believe that your best days are behind you. Because as long as you are here, there is still more to do, more to see, more to feel, more to be. You are not just aging, you are living, and that is something to be proud of. Aging isn't something to fight against, and it isn't something to fear, it's something to live. Every wrinkle, every silver strand of hair, every slowed step, it all tells a story of where you've been, what you've seen, the things you've built, the people you've loved. And yet, the world doesn't always celebrate that. It moves forward, always looking for what's new, what's young, what's next. It can make you feel like your time has passed, like you are just watching from the sidelines as life keeps moving. But here's the truth. Your time hasn't passed. You are still here. And as long as you are here, you are still a part of the world, still contributing, still learning, still growing, still loving. Maybe you don't move as fast as you used to. Maybe your hands shake a little more. Maybe your hearing isn't as sharp. Maybe you forget things that once came easily. But none of that changes who you are. You are still you. You are still the same person who has lived through decades of change, who has loved deeply, who has overcome struggles, who has found joy in the little things. You are still capable of laughter, of kindness, of offering wisdom that others can't begin to understand. It's easy to focus on what's been lost, the energy that isn't what it once was, the people who are no longer here, the roles that have changed. It's easy to let the weight of it all settle onto your shoulders, to let it convince you that aging is only about decline. But aging is not just about what's behind you. It's also about what's still ahead. It's about waking up each morning and realizing that you have another day to fill, another chance to feel the warmth of the sun on your skin, another chance to listen to your favorite song, another chance to taste something delicious, to read a new book, to hold someone's hand, to laugh until your stomach hurts. Another chance to remind yourself that no matter what the world says, your presence still matters. Maybe the world is louder now, more chaotic, harder to understand. Maybe conversations seem quicker, music seems faster, trends seem stranger. But that doesn't mean you don't belong in it. The world needs you. It needs your stories, your perspective, your patience, your love. It needs the quiet strength that comes from living a full life, the wisdom that only comes from experience. It needs the way you remember things that others have forgotten, the way you can see patterns and lessons in the past that help make sense of the present. You may not always feel needed. You may not always feel seen, but you are. In ways you may not even realize, you are shaping the lives around you. Maybe it's in the way you listen when someone younger needs advice. Maybe it's in the way you pass down a family recipe or tell a story that makes someone else feel understood. Maybe it's in the way you remind people that life is more than rushing from one thing to the next, that sometimes the best moments come when you slow down. And maybe, just maybe, you still have things you want to do. Maybe you still have places you want to see, people you want to reconnect with, dreams you thought you had put away for good. Maybe you still have more to create, more to learn, more to experience. The truth is, you are never too old to want something more. You are never too old to change, to grow, to surprise yourself. You are never too old to find something that makes your heart feel full. Not every day will be easy. There will be moments of frustration, moments of forgetting, moments when your body refuses to do what you want it to do. There will be moments when you feel left behind, moments when you miss the way things used to be, moments when you wish you could turn back time just for a little while. But those moments do not define you. They do not take away from everything you have been, everything you still are. Aging is not about disappearing. It is not about becoming less. It is about stepping into a new season of life with the same courage that has carried you through every other season. It is about finding the beauty in what is still here, in what is still possible. It is about recognizing that your value does not fade just because the years pass. And for the people who love someone who is aging, the best thing you can do is remind them of that. See them, really see them, not just for the wrinkles, not just for the changes, but for the life that still exists within them. Ask them about their stories, listen to their memories, sit with them, even in the quiet moments, even when there are no words. Let them know they are still important, still respected, still deeply loved. Aging is not a problem to be solved. It is not something to be fixed. It is simply life unfolding in a different way. And there is beauty in that if you choose to see it. There is beauty in the way a hand that has held decades of history still reaches out for another. There is beauty in the way a voice that has spoken words of love, of comfort, of wisdom, still has so much left to say. There is beauty in the way eyes that have seen so much still light up at the sight of someone they love. You are not just aging, you are living, and that is something to cherish. There's a quiet strength in aging that people don't always recognize. The strength it takes to wake up every day and keep going, even when your body aches, even when the world feels unfamiliar, even when so much of what you once knew has changed. The strength it takes to accept the things you can no longer do while still finding joy in the things you can. The strength it takes to keep loving, keep giving, keep sharing your wisdom, even when it feels like the world doesn't always listen. People talk about aging like it's something to avoid, something to run from. They sell creams to erase wrinkles, pills to restore energy, programs to make you feel young again. But youth isn't the only thing that holds value. There is something deeply powerful about a life that has been fully lived, about the hands that have built, the heart that has endured, the mind that has weathered every storm and still stands strong. Aging isn't a loss. It's an accumulation of memories, of lessons, of love. You have seen things others haven't. You have lived through moments that others only read about in history books. You have made choices, taken risks, built relationships, and survived losses that once felt unbearable. You carry the weight of all the years that came before, and yet you are still moving forward. That is not something to be pitied. That is something to be honored. There are days when it may not feel that way. Days when your reflection in the mirror doesn't match the person you still feel like inside. Days when the past feels closer than the present. Days when you wonder if anyone really notices, really understands, really sees you. But you are not invisible. You are not forgotten. You are not just a reminder of what once was. You are still here, and your presence still matters. The people who love you may not always say it in the way you need to hear it. They may not always understand what it feels like to be in your shoes. But that doesn't mean they don't care. They are watching, they are learning, they are carrying pieces of you with them in ways you may never fully see. The way you spoke to them with kindness, the way you comforted them when they were afraid, the way you made them feel safe and loved, those things don't disappear with time. They become part of the people you've touched, woven into the fabric of who they are. And maybe that is the greatest gift of aging, the realization that your impact isn't measured by what you can still do, but by what you have already done, by the people whose lives you have shaped, by the love you have given, the lessons you have taught, the moments you have created that will outlive you. Aging is not about what's been taken from you. It's about what you have given, what you have built, what you have left behind in the hearts of others. It's about the stories that will be told long after you are gone, the traditions that will be carried on, the small but powerful ways your presence in this world will never truly fade. And while you are still here, there is still more to do. Maybe not in the way you once did, maybe not with the same energy or speed, but there is still love to give. There are still conversations to have. There are still moments of joy to be found, no matter how simple. A warm cup of coffee on a quiet morning, the sound of laughter from someone you love, the beauty of a sunset, the comfort of a familiar song, the deep satisfaction of a story well told. These things may seem small, but they are what make life rich. Aging doesn't mean you stop living. It means you learn to live differently. You learn to appreciate what you have now instead of longing for what used to be. You learn to slow down, to notice things in a way you never did before. You learn that happiness isn't always about chasing the next thing, but about cherishing what's already here. And if you ever find yourself feeling like the world has moved on without you, remember this. Your existence is not measured by how busy you are, by how many things you accomplish, by how much you can keep up with the pace of those around you. Your worth is not defined by your productivity. It is defined by the love you have given, the kindness you have shown, the lives you have touched. No one lives forever, but that doesn't mean your presence fades when your time here is done. You live on in the people you've loved, in the lessons you've passed down, in the memories that bring warmth long after you are gone. You are still a part of everything, still connected to the people who matter most. And as long as your name is spoken, as long as your stories are told, as long as your love is remembered, you will never truly be gone. So let go of the fear that aging means becoming less. You are not fading. You are not losing yourself. You are stepping into a different season, a different rhythm, a different way of being, and there is beauty in that. There is beauty in the way you have endured, in the way you continue to wake up each day and make the choice to keep going. There is beauty in the way you still find reasons to laugh, to hope, to love. Aging is not an ending, it is a continuation, a testament to the life you have lived, the people you have touched, the love you have shared. It is a reminder that every moment matters, that every day is a gift, that you are still and always will be worthy of joy, of respect, of being seen. You are not just growing old, you are growing wiser, growing deeper, growing into the fullness of who you are meant to be. And that is something no one can take from you. You are still here, and that is enough.